they're going to compete with anything you can think of, whether we're talking about grocery store or supermarket, um, Costco, even, any place that's going to carry these sorts of healthcare, beauty kind of stuff. So, PG is a ticker for Procter and Gamble. You have CL, it's Colgate. You have KMB, is Kimberly Clark. Kimberly Clark's more focused. They like Kleenex is one of their brands. They're more focused on fiber products, tissues, toilet papers. CHG, which is Church Dwight, they're one of these niche players. They basically dominate the niches. So they'll have something like water picks. If you have a retainer like I've got and it's stuck in there and you can't clean it, you use one of these water picks. If you have braces, same thing. They lead in a category like that. They lead with charging condoms. They lead in just these really specific categories. And so they don't necessarily compete with a conglomerate like a Procter and Gamble or a Colgate. Last one on here is Clorox, and they're in a similar situation. So what I found interesting about all of these peers is almost uniformly, they all say how their biggest customer, who would you guess their biggest customer would be?
Oh gosh. I guess women.
I mean, like, which store is buying the most product from these manufacturers and then reselling them to customers? If you had to pick a guess.
Well, it's got to be either Walmart or Amazon.
Yeah, it's Walmart, and it's like not even close, which I found surprising.
Really?
Like, I would have thought that because they'll disclose like, hey, this customer's 10%, maybe this one's 5% of sales.
Mm-hmm.
Almost uniformly, it's Walmart and nobody else. So even though Amazon might be taking a lot of share in some other product categories, when it comes to consumer staples like these, it's all Walmart. So it's interesting because then you think, all right, what's the growth prospects of a Walmart? Doesn't sound too attractive. What's the growth prospects of everyday staples? Might not sound too attractive either, but you get the upside of it doesn't swing as much because people need them when people need them. I pulled up some numbers here and I'll put these up on the screen. So if we were to compare things like return on capital, Procter & Gamble is actually on the low end compared to its peers. And you wonder if that's just because of its massive size. I mean, we're talking to, so first, Procter & Gamble is like very global. You talk about the share between US and international, they're probably around 50-50 there. And they're like a $70 billion company when it comes to sales, which is obviously not much when you're talking about the retailers, but when you're talking about manufacturers of some of these big consumer staple companies, that's a lot. That's like a league all on its own. Mm-hmm. And so, I guess the downside to that is they're not making as high of returns on their invested capital, but still pretty good. It's still in the low double digits. And so, that's pretty attractive. They don't have as much of a high ROIC as someone like a Colgate or a Clorox does, but you can look below that where there's EPS growth, and Clorox and Colgate don't really have that great of EPS growth, at least compared to Procter and Gamble. So Procter and Gamble, they really thrive on being able to cut costs, being able to find economies of scale through their various investments. They made a comment how they just recently upped their reinvestment in marketing. They did that last year. They're doing it again this year by a 1.7%. So pretty significant as a percent of revenues. So, that's kind of the story behind them. What I find interesting about these companies is, so how I like to like look to history to try to find clues to the future, right?
Right.
So I stumbled on this article by HBR, Harvard Business Review.
Yep.
So they're really good magazine, kind of focused on like CEOs and how they should run their business. And so they'll talk a lot about corporate strategy, which probably like puts tears of boredom on most people's faces. But if you think, it's very fascinating to think about how much has changed since like the 90s, or even when Buffett like bought Coca-Cola in 1987. Back then, this whole idea of like private label brands was not really an issue. So nowadays, you walk into a Costco. Costco is a perfect example of this. They have their own private label brand called Kirkland. And so they'll put this private label Kirkland brand next to, something that Procter and Gamble might sell or something that Clorox might sell. And they'll be stealing market share from these huge established manufacturers because people are willing to either trust the Kirkland brand because they know that it's going to be good, or in like if you're in a Walmart kind of a case, you buy it for the value. And so that trend between back in the 90s, early 90s, there was not hardly any penetration in these private label brands. The retailers nowadays are huge brand names, but back then they were not even on the map. Like Walmart was like maybe in the 30s, and then it dropped down to like 50 out of however many. So people did not consider retailers like a Home Depot, Costco, Walmart. None of those guys were considered to have any sort of value other than really the real estate.
I know that when I have shopped at stores like a Walmart or Costco, a lot of times I will look at the off brand, I guess is what you're looking at. And it's, sometimes it is 10, 15, 20 cents cheaper. And you kind of have to weigh, is the quality of this going to be equal to something for Procter or Gamble or Kimberly Clark or whoever. So it is an interesting dilemma sometimes.
And I think it's just so specific to product category itself. It's, certain things you want the brand, and certain things it doesn't matter as much.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
Gilbert says he's always amazed at just how many products they own in the supermarket, not just how many, but also the variety. Seriously, like if you want to have some fun and like really get a grasp of how much Procter and Gamble is in your life, just go in your bathroom and start flipping labels around and see if that P&G is on there. Women's deodorant, men's deodorant, the whole thing. They're all over the place, and it definitely makes it attractive for a lot of people.